The problem with the mind is mostly that we take it seriously, says Jack Kornfield in episode 254 of Heart Wisdom, Healing the Unfinished Business of the Heart. This one closes out a 2-part series which took place in late December 1991, all about the potentiality of healing through meditation, healing through listening in to ourselves. Jack in this shares about how we've been taught not to feel, and so we've closed down and lost a connection to the things that we really care about and an acceptance of ourselves. Have you noticed that when you sit down for meditation, or even lay down to relax sometimes, all of this stuff, this I don't want to deal with this right now, starts coming up? Yeah, the heart has some unfinished business. Sometimes it's just, the random pieces of things that need to be processed from the day, little housekeeping. Other times it's these giant things that we've really pushed down, or maybe life moved too fast and we weren't able to process it in the time. And so here it is. And I would assume the deeper we go into meditation and our spiritual practice, the more unfinished business probably becomes dislodged. Luckily, this is the way we process, and Jack gives a very direct prescription, saying, don't live in the mind, rest in the heart, and let the mind come and go as it will. This is discovering your Buddha nature. So we'll leave it at that. I have just one bit of housekeeping this week, and that is Jack's new online course, The Awakened Heart, Discovering Your Great Joy and Peace. This is an amazing online journey and comprehensive illumination of the Brahma Viharas in Buddhism, the divine abodes, otherwise known as the 4 qualities of the awakened heart: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and peace. In this beautiful course, Jack uncovers how we can live these ancient Buddhist qualities in the modern world in gratitude, generosity, and goodness, and how we can then apply them to serve the world and our highest intentions and the highest intentions of others in true, authentic joy. I really hope you will join Jack on this journey. You can head to jackkornfield.com and go to the courses tab to sign up. So there we go. That's all for this week. I want to thank you for joining us, as always. This is episode 254, Healing the Unfinished Business of the Heart. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you help others through the authenticity of your being, and may your heart be smiling. Namaste.
Now, just as when we stop moving and running around and being busy, there's pains and holding in the body that we encounter, so too often when we sit, in the heart we feel that which has been held, the unfinished business, a certain grief, the longing, the sorrows, the wounds that we carry with us. If I were to ask tonight, how many of you at this time are working with some great loss in your life or some grief? I have at other times. Usually a third or half of the people in the room will raise their hands, and the other half are in a period in between loss. It's a part of our life. The Buddha was asked once, which do you think is more, O monks? He said, the waters of the 4 great oceans, or the tears that you have shed in birth after birth after birth, for the losses of things that you love, for parting with ones who are dear, for the sorrows you've seen. He said, greater are the tears you've shed than the waters in all the 4 great oceans. We are all a part of that ocean of tears. And to sit with it, to sit is to touch that part of our life, to discover how to honor it with compassion and attention. Jack Engler, who's a Vipassana teacher here and a friend, and also a psychologist at Harvard, did his doctoral thesis on meditation, and one of his main findings or suppositions was that a great deal of spiritual practice is really about grieving, about learning how to release and open and let go. That's the work of the heart in meditation. And it takes a lot of courage to let your heart be broken, open. What is the awakened heart? Asked Chögyam Trungpa. The awakened heart of a warrior is the heart of tenderness and sadness. When you awaken your heart, you find to your surprise that your heart is empty. You find that you are looking into space. What are you? Who are you? Where's your heart? If you really look, you won't find anything tangible and solid in there. Of course, you might find something very solid if you have a grudge against someone or you've fallen possessively in love, but that's not the awakened heart. If you search for the awakened heart, if you put your hand through your rib cage and feel for it, there's nothing there except for tenderness. You feel sore and soft, and if you open your eyes to the rest of the world, you feel tremendous sadness. This kind of sadness doesn't come from being mistreated. You don't feel sad because someone has insulted you or because you feel impoverished. Rather, this sadness is unconditioned. It occurs because your heart is completely open. It is like pure raw meat. Even if a mosquito lands on it, you feel so touched. It is this tender heart of the warrior that has the power to heal and transform the world. When we sit and let ourselves open inwardly, we feel a lot of judgment, how hard we've been on ourselves, what we think we've done wrong, what's been wrong with the world around us, sitting on the judge's seat. In many places, they wouldn't even hire you as a judge, you know. You'd have to go to Uganda under Idi Amin and maybe they'd give you a job, but not in any civilized country. You feel the grief that's there and the loss. And then you wonder, how did this happen? Some of it's just the pain of being human. Some of it's the pain of a story I read at retreats of this 19-year-old medic sitting his first retreat and remembering what he saw 10 years before in Vietnam that he'd repressed because it was just so painful to see what humans do to one another. And some of it is kind of ordinary. Let me read you a poem. It's called Ordinary Heartbreak. She climbs easily onto the box that seats her above the swivel chair at adult height, crosses her young girl's legs, left ankle over right, and smooths the plastic apron over her lap, while the beautician lifts her ponytail and mockingly says, "This hair's as coarse as a horse's tail." Then, as if that's all there is to say, the woman at once whacks off and tosses its 1.5 feet into the trash. And the little girl who didn't want her hair cut, but long ago learned successfully how not to say what it is she wants, who even at this minute cannot quite grasp her shock and grief, is getting her hair cut. For convenience, her mother put it. The long waves gone that had been evidence at night when loosened from their clasp that she might be secretly a princess. Rather than cry out, she grips her own wrist and looks to her mother in the mirror. But her mother is too polite or too reserved or too indifferent to defend the girl. So the girl herself takes up indifference, while the pain follows a hidden channel to a place almost unknown to her in her body, convinced as she is that her own emotions are not the ones her life depends on. She shifts her gaze from the mother's face back to the haircut now, so steadily as if this short-haired child she sees were someone else. We've been taught not to feel, and so we've closed down, and we've lost a connection with what we really care about. We've lost an acceptance of ourselves. Self-acceptance is probably half of spiritual life, if not all of it. And to pay attention carefully to the heart is to reawaken this capacity to feel and to value ourselves, to reawaken a trust of ourselves. One of the great temples that has been built in America in recent years is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. More people go there than any other place in Washington. 5 million people a year walk by that long black wall with 58,000 names on it, and they weep. I came down today to pay respects to two good friends of mine. These are notes people left there. Go down and visit them sometime. They're on panel 42, lines 22 and 26. I think you'll like them. Dearest Eddie Lynn, I'd give anything to have you shell just one more pecan for me on Grandma's porch. I miss you so much. All my love, your cousin Annie. Just wanted you to know I love you, brother. Still talk to Kathy and your babies. They're growing and proud of you. Somehow you're part of me. I'll watch over them for you as best I can. I'll see you soon. Just wanted to let you know everything's okay. This marks the second year I've come to the wall. I've seen the names of those I know, and yes, I've cried. My problem is I don't know the names of those I tried to help only to have them die in my arms. In Vietnam at age 20, I was put in charge of a riverboat. Now every time I get on a boat, I only see the red blood running over the deck into the water. I try to take my two sons fishing, but we never stay out long. The fish don't seem to bite when I take them out, like they do when they go with someone else's father. They're too young to understand that their father does not like the reflections he sees in the water. For these reasons, I write to say I'm sorry. I did the best I could. To all you mothers and fathers and wives and sisters and lovers, I'm sorry I could do no more. I wish I knew your names so I could touch them in the black stone, but I don't. I'm so sorry. Attached to this letter are my service medals. These belong to you and your family and friends. I don't need them to show I was there. I have your faces to remind me in my sleep. Rest well, my brothers. May the wind be to your backs and the sun in your faces. On the day we meet again, please do one thing. Tell me your names. It's a temple because people go there and they let themselves feel again in ways many haven't for a long, long time, and reconnect with this mystery of life and death. It's a temple because it's a place somehow of forgiveness. That for a moment we see that we're all in it together, and we can forgive all the things that we've held back from for so long. Because in the end, really, when you die, what matters? When you sit with someone who's dying and you have that privilege, someone who's been conscious in their life, and they look back, all that really matters is very simple. Did I love well? Did I really care for this life and the people around me? Did I live in a full way, in a free way? So there's a healing of the heart as we sit. There's a healing of the mind too, of all its conflict and tension and ideals and images. We have so many. My teacher Ajahn Chah used to say, we sit and we're at war with what's right and what's wrong, and courageously carrying on the battle with what's too short and what's too hot and what's too cold, and all the ideas we have about things. One Hindu guru I studied with said, I don't understand you people. You never want what you have and you want what you don't have. And so you're unhappy. Why not reverse it? Why not want what you have and not want what you don't have? It's so simple. But we have all these ideas, and the ideas of how things should be, and the thoughts we have, they blind us. They keep us caught. Can I read you another poem? I will. This is about Oedipus. Remember him? Long afterwards, Oedipus and the Sphinx, Part 2. Long afterwards, Oedipus, old and blinded, walked the road. He smelled a familiar smell. It was the Sphinx. Oedipus said, I want to ask one question. Why didn't I recognize my mother? You gave the wrong answer, said the Sphinx. But that was what made everything possible, said Oedipus. No, she said, when I asked, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening, you answered man. You didn't say anything about woman. When you say man, says Oedipus, you include women too. Everyone knows that. She said, that's what you think. We have all these ideas, and you sit and you'll see them, how your meditation should be, how your walking should be, how your breath should be, how your body should be, what you should be. There's endless stories, praise and blame, and every kind of archetype and possibility, and there's hatred and Hitler's in there, and there's the bodhisattva of compassion, and Mother Teresa comes and says kind things, and a little while later you become petty again. And it moves from one extreme to another. It has no pride. It will do anything. Thinking, planning, it's what minds do. What would it mean to heal the mind? It is to sit and see its nature. We can cleanse or purify the mind in some way, train it a little bit. But the problem mostly is that we take it seriously. And when we do, it separates us, I, me, and mine. And we get enveloped in what is called the body of fear, which comes out of all those thoughts. The mind creates the abyss, the separation, and the heart crosses it. Healing of the mind is when we can hold in our hearts all that arises and sense a rest and a kind of goodness, a wholeness in us, where the thoughts come and the imaginations and the hopes and the fears, and we don't live in the mind, we rest in the heart and let the mind come and go as it will. This is discovering our Buddha nature. It's discovering something so fundamental to us that we often lose sight of it, the ground of our being. From Thomas Merton, he says, there is in all things an inexhaustible sweetness and purity, a silence that is a fountain of action and joy. It rises up in wordless gentleness and flows out of us from unseen roots of all created being. The healing of the mind is to simply touch this place in us that can see all the stories and all the hopes and all the fears and all the imaginings and all the comparison, to see the sorrows and the joys of it, and discover that the heart is a place of rest, that the heart is greater than all of those, and learn the lesson all of those things bring us back to connect us to ourselves. This life is a test. It is only a test. If it had been an actual life, you would have received further instructions on where to go and what to do. Remember, this life is only a test. There's a Tibetan practice that I'll recommend to you this evening. You might keep in mind, and this practice goes very simply, that you look around you in the world, and you look in such a way that you recognize how every being that you encounter is already enlightened, that the entire world around you is enlightened, all except one being. That's yourself. And all the rest are the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of mercy and compassion who have appeared in these various forms to help you awaken. And so they do exactly the right thing to fulfill your awakening of patience and understanding and mercy and tenderness and letting go and freedom. And the only person who is yet to awaken is yourself. So this is the healing of the mind, not by fixing the mind, but by dropping into the heart to a place that can hold all of that from rest and understanding. Healing of the body and the senses, of the heart, of the mind. And finally, the most amazing, wonderful healing, the center of the Buddha's awakening, is the healing of emptiness. You can feel it first just in the silence. How blessed in some way is the silence, how much it allows things to open, be felt, be touched, be received, and then to be understood. The Buddha said when he spoke that these 5 processes that make up the body and memory and perception and feelings, consciousness, these 5 processes are empty of self, that our life is empty. What could this mean? Well, there's the story you may have heard many times of Mullah Nasruddin, Sufi kind of wise man and fool, going into the bank to cash a check. And the cashier there says, "Can you please identify yourself?" So he pulls a small mirror out of his pocket and says, "Yep, that's me, all right." This is how we create our identity. Out of thoughts and images, we tell ourselves, I'm this way, this is who I am, this is who I've been, this is what I've learned, this is how I'm supposed to be. And we do this over and over. And then we create this sense of self, and we protect it and hold on to it and guard it and try to make it look better than it is and feel ashamed of it. Do you know all those pieces? And yet underneath, when we listen, when we get still in the silence, we discover that there isn't a solid self at all. There's nothing in there we can say, that's me. Instead, there is a river, a process of changing feelings and changing thought and changing sensations, none of which we possess. Do you direct your thoughts? You've had a day of meditation. Surely you can't imagine that anymore, that your mind is in your control. Well, how about your feelings? Do you choose your feelings? Hardly ever. And your body, all right, don't grow old, don't lose any more hair. You know, I look in the mirror and there, every few weeks there's less of it. And I say, come on, now no more, right? You just rent this body. You get it for a little while, and it lives its own life. You can care for it, but it's not who you are any more than your thoughts or your feelings. You don't own it. From Gandhi, he said, I have only 3 enemies. My favorite enemy, the one most easily influenced for the better, is the entire British Empire. My second enemy, the Indian people, is far more difficult. If you've ever been to India, you would understand that. But my most formidable opponent is a man named Mohandas K. Gandhi. With him, I seem to have very little influence. So you sit, and if you really let yourself feel and pay attention, you see that we don't possess any of it, that it's not solid, and that the sense of our separate self is a fiction, that the more we try to hold and possess, the more we suffer. From Chögyam Rinpoche, you live in illusion and the appearance of things. There is a reality, but you do not know this. When you understand it, you will discover that you are nothing. And being nothing, you are everything. That is all. Amazingly simple. You live in illusion and the appearance of things. There is a reality, but you do not know it. When you understand it, you will discover you are nothing. And being nothing, you are everything. That is all. The Diamond Sutra puts it this way: thus shall ye think of this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, an echo, a rainbow, a phantom, and a dream. There's this sense, when you're silent and pay attention, of life. Thoughts arise out of nowhere and disappear into nowhere. Feelings come out of nowhere and disappear. Sensations arise out of the void and disappear. A whole day arises. In fact, 1991, just about over, right? One more day after this, I think that's it. Yeah, or two. And then gone. Where did it go? How about 1990? The 80s, the 60s, gone, disappeared. Your childhood, all of that. It arises tentatively for a moment in some form, just this way once. It's not ours to possess. It's not who we are, this small being that we think, solid and separate. And when you open and listen more and more deeply, there comes, instead of this sense of possession and separation, a kind of aliveness and interconnectedness, that we are the air that we breathe and share with the trees, the oxygen and carbon dioxide. The sky, we're the products of our parents, and we're the products of the krill in the oceans that the various other sea creatures eat that keep the cycle of life going, and of the worms in the ground and the bees that pollinate all the plants that make it possible for us to eat food. We're all connected in this web of life. It's very precious and tentative. Each day is unique. Each person is unique. For a moment this way, and then a moment it changes. The astronauts understood this, these Russians who went to live for 6 months in the space station, brought 3 fish up with them for an experiment to see how fish would do, goldfish in weightlessness. And then after a month or two there, the fish started to die. Guess they didn't do very well without gravity. And they said, oh, how sorry we were to see it, how we cared for them, what we didn't do to try to save these 3 goldfish, how much they meant to us. Down on earth, we'd go fishing and think nothing of it. But when you're away from the earth and you see it in a distance, every form of life becomes so precious. And then when they landed back again, he talked about getting down on the earth and kneeling and touching his cheek to it and kissing the earth, just to be back on this precious earth. The healing of emptiness comes when we discover not the small sense of ourself, of possession, when we see that we don't own even this body and mind, but find a place of peace and rest and great joy in the midst of all things, when we discover this eternal home. From Hermann Hesse, let me see if I can find him here, in the midst of all of these books, yes, poem. He says, sometimes when a bird cries out, or the wind sweeps through a tree, or a dog howls in a far-off farm, I hold still and listen a long time. My world turns and goes back to the place where 1,000 forgotten years ago, the bird and the blowing wind were like me, were my brothers and sisters. To understand this emptiness out of which things come, this non-possessiveness, is a deep task in spiritual practice, not something you need to figure out from these words. But to come to sense it is to discover your home, the true place of rest, the place that is trustworthy, the trusting heart or the trusting mind. And in each of us, there is a deep longing for wholeness, for healing, to be connected with our bodies, to be connected with our hearts. We can sense a tremendous capacity for compassion and wakefulness and openness. So as we sit and walk and practice here, that's what's possible, a reclaiming of this, an awakening of this Buddha nature. You can sit, as Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, with a half smile on your lips, like all of the statues of the Buddha, just resting with a kind of dignity halfway between heaven and earth, allowing the breath to come and go, allowing the sorrows of the heart and the beauties of the sky, and all of that which makes us human, and allowing a healing that comes when we bring awareness and respect to the breath, to the body, the heart and mind, and touch all of those things with compassion and wisdom. Meditation is not a passive activity, even though we seem kind of slow and quiet here. It's really a courageous thing, and it requires a lot of courage to sit still and not run away, to touch your sorrows, to open your eyes to the pain of the world around us, the hungry children, the rainforests, the fact of all of our death, and to discover that which is timeless and eternal in the midst of all of that. It's a very great undertaking that we do here, and I want to encourage you to really give yourself to it, because that's the only thing that will satisfy your hearts. To give yourself doesn't mean to try and make it peaceful or get concentrated. Those too will come in their own season. But rather to bring the respect that Zen master said, of lifting up the cup and hearing the sound of the spoon when it clinks, and smelling the tea and tasting it, feeling its warmth in your hands, placing it down with respect. To bring a steadiness and a respect and a caring attention to the breath, to your steps, to your body, to your heart. And out of that, all of that which is in you will open. You, like the Buddha, will discover the great heart of compassion and a freedom in the midst of all things. To end, I want to read you a poem that gives the spirit of meditation in a somewhat different vein. It's called Duck Meditation. Now we are ready to look at something pretty special. It is a duck riding the ocean 100 feet beyond the surf as he cuddles in the swells. There's a big heaving in the Atlantic, and he is part of it. He can rest while the Atlantic heaves because he rests in the Atlantic. Probably he doesn't know how large the ocean is, and neither do you. But he realizes it. And what does he do, I ask you? He sits down in it. He reposes in the immediate as if it were infinity, which it is. That is religion, and the duck has it. How about you? Thank you.